That's question 1 tonight, Abraham and Lot, in Genesis chapter 14. And with any luck, we'll finish this lesson. We're going to try to do a lesson tonight when we can, so buckle up. Here we go. Let's begin with prayer. Father in heaven, thank you so much for the good day you've given to us. We're thankful for the rain and all the blessings that you provide for us every day. We're especially thankful for this time to gather together, open your word together, study, and come to know the things that you have preserved for us and caused to happen so that we can be encouraged by your plan as it unfolds before us here. Be with us as we study and help us be with those that are unwell and unable to be out and those that are traveling. Most of all, Father, we thank you for Jesus and all that he means to us. And we pray again that you will guide us. It's our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So we just finished the Tower of Babel and kind of reviewed a little bit on Abraham and Lot separating there in chapter 13. And so now we are in chapter 14. And in general, what is the political situation in Canaan as this chapter opens? War. Yeah, the northern kingdoms, which are actually the kingdoms of Mesopotamia and north of the north and eastern part of the Fertile Crescent, have dominated these southern kingdoms for a while, and that's kind of the way of the world during this time period. Might makes right because might makes wealth, and that's how they get their riches, by controlling this particular region, which is very profitable. It's trade routes go through there. And it also fulfills the prophecy that we read earlier that Ham was going to be the servant of his brothers, and Ham is the Canaanite people in the middle there. So where were the first 4 allied kings from? Anybody want to try to name the places? There's a map. We have, oops. I was looking for so here's Shinar. Here's Elam. Here is the second one, which is Elasar. And then you have Goyim, although it's spelled differently in my Bible at least. So this is the Fertile Crescent right here. It comes down and goes down through here. So there in this section here is where all of these kings are from. And where is the question 3? Where are the second group of 5 kings from?
Canaan area where Sodom and Gomorrah.
Okay, so they're in. I keep wanting to hit the laser and it's not there. So I pointed out where each of these cities were. This is Sodom, and there's a question mark after Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah. This was a plain, a very rich plain at the time, and so there's where these cities kind of all line up on this map. If you look at somebody else's rendition of the map, they'll be in other places, actually. This is the slide that shows that. And then question 4, where will these two armies eventually meet?
The Valley of Siddim.
In the Valley of Siddim. And again, this is just a guess, but it's where that blue star is right there. Is on one map that I had has the Valley of Siddim. And that is sometimes called the Dead Sea Valley. And let me stop here for a moment, because these maps are based on, and you can see on the inset here, this big map is here at the base of the Dead Sea. But it wasn't the Dead Sea at this point in time. There's a live sea where Lot ended up in Sodom. What did we read earlier in chapter 13 and verse 10? What was Sodom like?
Lot chose it to keep his animals in.
Right, and what was the expression that was used to describe it? It was like the garden of the Lord, which another name for that would be what? Eden. So it's not a dread, salty, yucky place, okay? And so the maps that we have, when we try to show places that are there, is based on what we see now. And when God is going to, in just a few chapters here, destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, this huge trench a scar was left in the land by God's destruction of those cities of the plain. And that that became the Dead Sea. Otherwise, it would have just gone on down into the Gulf, I think Gulf of Aqaba, to the south. So, do you remember when I did God's geography lesson? I mean, I think that was probably like 15 years ago.
Rivers that go down, we named them all along the side, yes?
What?
The rivers that came into we had named the rivers.
Well, that was,
Yeah,
okay. Anyway, I'm just wondering if I had an opening to do it again. Because I love geography, and that was a fascinating thing to me. So the Valley of Siddim, which is what Moses is calling it in this book, as we're reading it here, identifies it geographically to the people who are reading the book. And the people who are reading the book are way post Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction. So they understand kind of where that is in their minds. And so I have, to show you the difference here, I was trying to think of what could I show you that would be similar to the great change that you're seeing in this region of the world after God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. And it was Dry Falls in Washington. How many of you have been to Dry Falls in eastern Washington? That is what it looks like now. But the Columbia River came right over the top of those cliffs. Before volcanic action, it's not the volcano like Mount St. Helens, it's lava and magma that comes up through the ground and just flows out like this right on the surface. And this is an artist's rendering of when the Columbia River came over those cliffs, what it looked like. And just looking at, you can see that those are water eroded cliffs. When the Columbia was going over there, it was the world's largest waterfall. There was no waterfall in the world larger than what we call Dry Falls now. It's worth your while if you're in eastern Washington to go by there and look at it. That picture there came off of one of their signs in their shop, or in their visitor center. So that's why when we're looking at this and we see that Dead Sea, and we're looking at that and we're seeing that's what we know it as. We didn't know it as the other. And at the time that Abram is here, Sodom and Gomorrah look like the water. I mean, it's well watered and wonderful there. Okay, did I make that clear? Does everybody see where I'm going with that? So question 5 then. What was the cause of this war from verse 4? Go ahead.
It was a rebellion of the people that were underneath the king.
Go ahead, say it.
I'll take you
King Kedlamar. and his group up there in the northeastern part of the Fertile Crescent. So they had been under their rule for 12 years, and in the 13th year they rebelled. People get tired of having a big thumb on them and having to pay taxes and send money away from home. Mike?
I was trying to figure out how long, it says, and it came to pass, but how long are we talking? These guys had just been in Babel together, right? How long did that, they're at war. How long would it take us for our relatives to be at war with each other, Civil War?
Well, I give you the Civil War as an example of that.
Yeah, so that was a couple years.
And so, we settled Jamestown in 1612, so 150 years later, we're at war with Britain for our independence. And I realize that seems like longer than 12, but I mean, it is longer than 12. But you're talking about from Babylon and being spread out.
Yeah. And the other
Well, if you look back at the genealogy in chapter 10, you have Eber is verse 25 of chapter 10. That's when the earth was divided, whether you're talking about languages or otherwise. And then you have all of these sons that come down through Havilah, Joktan, etc., his sons. And then you come over to the next chapter 11. You have Eber, and Eber lived 430 years, had sons and daughters. So you got 430 years there. And then you have Ru, and then you have Serug, 200 years. I mean, there's probably 1,000 years between Babel and where we are now. And I'm just a guess. I mean, I'm just perusing there. I hadn't thought about that before.
Because the thing that started this wasn't the rebellion, it was the putting the yoke
Right.
on the
Right.
other kingdom. Why would you go do that?
Right.
Stay in your own place.
Right. Well, because it's rich, and you got the power. Why did Russia take Ukraine?
Well, obviously they weren't following God.
That's why, yeah. I mean, we realize that. That's exactly right. So, and like most people, the people down in the south got tired of sending their tribute to the foreign king, and so Chedorlaomer wasn't interested in losing that funding that he had from them, and so he gathers a bunch of allies together and say, let's go down and, you can share in the plunder, and we'll bring back stuff, and we'll put them back under our power, and so that's what happened. So let's go on to question 6 then. What did the army of the 4 kings do on their way to Canaan? Verses 5 through 7. They conquered people all the way down, and have more opportunities for winning things. So here's this is somebody's idea of what they did. That they would have come down on the outside here and taken these cities as well as those up in the north, and then come back around here and captured these. And here's Sodom and Gomorrah in this map up here, and then they head back. So they capture people, they capture booty and treasure and whatever, and they put all these people under their bondage again. And again, the locations on just every time you would look at a different map, you're going to see people putting cities different places because we really don't know where they are. I personally believe that most of the cities of the plain are under the Dead Sea, that they've just been buried there. So the red cities on this map are the extra cities, and the blue cities are the 5 kings that rebelled. Specifically Sodom, Gomorrah, Mamre, Zoar, and Zeboim, or Admah. But again, I'm not copying off a map for you that's just somebody's guess. There's no reason for that. So they conquered on the way, conquered there, grabbed a bunch of stuff, and headed north. So question 7, what was the outcome of this battle of 5 kings versus 4 kings in chapter 14, verses 8 through 11. Yeah, it was a thorough rout of the 5 kings of the south. All of the possessions and food were taken as spoils of war. And if you've just come down and just wiped out all the people down here in the south and you're heading home, what's the last thing on your mind as you're heading home?
But you don't have to.
If you've totally routed everybody down here as you're heading home, what are you not worried about?
Anybody coming to follow you?
Anybody following you. And if you've had a really, really successful time, probably when you get to where you're going to go, it's party time. Okay? It's just we relax and enjoy the benefits of all that we have taken. And I have to tell you, I'm surprised that the king of Sodom is still alive. He must have had a really good hidey hole and hidden from them, because that's generally what, you take the king and maybe leave your own guy there in charge. But the king of Sodom is still there. All right, question 8. Who was the victim, who was a victim of this war, and what happened to him and his household from verse 12? Okay, so Lot is taken. Now, when we last saw Lot, that which is in the previous chapter, where was Lot living?
Sodom.
No.
Oh.
Close. Look in verse 12.
He was living in Sodom. That's what it says.
Pardon me?
It says he was living in Sodom.
No, it doesn't.
Mine says, for he was living in Sodom.
What translation do you have?
NASB.
My translation says he was living near Sodom. Now we get to chapter 13, and he is actually in Sodom. He has actually moved into town. But he was living in tents. He wouldn't have been living in tents in the city. Yes?
New King James also says in Sodom.
Okay. Well,
So is ESV.
okay.
What verse are you talking about?
I'm looking at chapter 13 and verse 12.
You said 14.
That's different.
See, they were
Yeah,
in
you're in
14.
13, we're in 14.
14 verse 12 and 13 verse 12 both state where Lot was living.
Right. Okay, so in chapter 13 and verse 12, it says, Abram lived in the land of Canaan with Lot, and while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom.
Yeah, I was reading it going, mine doesn't say what theirs says, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I was with you.
So, I mean, he's not going to pitch tents in the city. If you're living in a city, you're living in the city.
That's as far as,
Okay? Now, this is my opinion. But now when we get to chapter 14, he's moved into town. And what would be appealing to do that? Why would it be appealing to live in town as opposed to living in tents? You have a real house. You have the convenience there. You have the comfort of living in a city. I mean, how many of you live in tents? And if not, why not? Because it's more comfortable to live in a house. Okay? So does everybody, just out of curiosity, in chapter 13 and verse 14, do some of you have that he lives in Sodom?
As far as Sodom.
Say what?
As far as Sodom.
As far as Sodom. Okay. I know that he's living in and around there, but not in, actually. But listen, even as wicked as Sodom is, the attraction of living in the city can be overpowering. I mean, the convenience and the comfort and all of that's there. But his moving into Sodom wasn't without consequence, as we see here. Now, I always have to remember that 2 Peter 2:8 says that Lot was a righteous man. So he's living there, but he's not in sin. Yes, Ross.
But it's not very
Yeah, and we've been being prepared for something bad to happen here, like in Sodom and with Lot, because like we've talked about, Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the valley was good, and he went and took it, that kind of thing. So that's like that's Eden language for the sin. And then we talked about how he journeyed eastward, and it's never a good idea in the Bible to go eastward.
Right.
That was a bad thing. So it's like city, and then the fact that it's a city, we have not liked any of the cities that we've seen so far.
Right.
In the entire Bible. And like every time Sodom and Gomorrah has been mentioned, it'll say things like, this was before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right.
So it's like these ominous storm clouds are gathering.
Right.
Every single like bit of language is like something's bad about to happen.
Right.
And then now we have this like flood of like violence and stuff. It's the war. It's like this like flood of violence sweeping down through the land and carrying
Right.
away.
Right. Well, and even in that, because it was so wicked, can you see God's hand in, okay, this is going to be a round of punishment for what you're doing here. And again, that the prophecy that Ham is going to serve his brothers, that's all Jephthah up there in the northeastern part of the Fertile Crescent. And I think it's so bad, I think that's part of the reason here, it's so bad that Abram says, I don't want anything out of that city. I don't have anything to do with it. I don't want anybody to ever say that I was made rich because of that wicked place. Now, someone asked last week, but let's back up. Because of Lot's great wealth, they took him and his family and all the stuff that he had, all of his wealth. So someone asked last week, was it wrong for Abram to take Lot? Because God had said to leave your homeland and your people and your father's household. And I had responded, well, he took Lot because the older brother Haran had died, and so Lot became kind of his ward. I had been told earlier that Haran was 6 years older when he had died, but I also read that Lot and Abram could have been very close in age. They didn't have to be that far apart. Abram hasn't had any children. Haran is having children. So there's a chance that that's the case. I will tell you that God doesn't seem to chastise Abram for taking Lot with him. I don't see any indication of that here. At the same time, God's instructions seem to would include not taking Lot with you. It would just be he and Sarai. So then I started thinking, well, how did taking Lot change things? What's Lot's presence in Abram's life? What kind of changes has that brought just as a result of the fact that Lot's there?
All negative consequences.
Yeah, all of the fact that they had to move away from each other after they arrived because they're both very wealthy and it caused quarreling. It's now going to cause Abram to get into an armed conflict with these kings to rescue Lot, which wouldn't have happened had Lot not been there. And listen, all of this that's going on here, I know from Romans 8th chapter, what can God cause all things to work out for? Good. For good, even bad things. So that was just kind of a little side trip that I took based on our discussion last week that I wanted to investigate a little bit further.
Yeah.
Yes?
I think also if Lot was brought by Abram because his brother died and Abram was taking him on kind of as a son, that could have also served as a distraction later on as they kind of find out with Sarah being barren, not being able to produce, that
Right.
he's got this kid that he's treating as a
Right.
son, which obviously caused conflict.
Right. Well, and I thought about that too. Maybe he's viewing Lot as his heir. But he's not going to say that later on. He's not going to refer to Lot as his heir. He's got a steward that he's looking at as being his heirs of someone that was born in his house. And anything that Lot would be given, it would have been Haran's inheritance that he would have gotten, not Abram. So it's just kind of an interesting thing to think about. I know that after Sodom and Gomorrah, it's not like Abram, seeks Lot out. They're not a part of each other's lives after that. I don't see any kind of relationship with them afterwards. So question 9, how did Abraham, and I just like to call him Abraham. I get tired of, you all know who Abraham is, and you know that he was Abram before. Jesus refers to him as Abraham knew before. So how did Abraham hear about what happened to Lot, and what did he do in verses 13 through 15?
Well, he heard it from one who had escaped.
Okay. Yeah, a man who had escaped from these kings. And when I first started writing the answers down, I had written, a servant of Lot's escaped and found Abram. But that doesn't say that. It just says a man escaped. I think it probably was a servant of Lot's. Otherwise, why would he go find Abram, and why would he even know where Abram was? So I think that I'm assuming that it was a servant of Lot's. He would have been familiar with Abram. He would have recognized his relationship to Lot. He would have known about his whereabouts, which in this case was near Hebron and the great tree of Mamre. And Mamre is a person. I hadn't really thought about that, but he's one of the guys that is going to go with Abraham here. How is Abram described here in this text? In verse 13. Abram the Hebrew, which is the first time we're going to read the word Hebrew, that he's a Hebrew. Abram the Hebrew is the statement there. And that was a term usually used by foreigners to identify Israelites and distinguish Israelite to them foreigners as opposed to any other foreigners that were living in the land. So Hebrews were a specific group of foreigners that lived in this area that people who were non-Israelites called them Hebrews. Again, you'll get different answers as to why I read someplace, that's because you have Eber in the genealogy, but actually, unless I'm mistaken, Eber wasn't the ancestor. I mean, he is once removed an ancestor. He's an uncle, but he's not a direct descendant of them. So then, second part of that question, what did he do?
He called out 318 trained men from his household.
Okay, so let's just stop there. So he called out 318 trained men born in his household. Yes?
Do you mind if I back up just a little bit?
No?
Okay, thank you. A couple classes ago, when we talked about how, when Abraham or Avram and Sarai go down to Egypt, that kind of parallels Eve taking the fruit and all that. Then Lot and Avram have to separate, and that's like brothers fighting over livestock. So that's like Cain and Abel. So then now we get this flood type narrative where there's a war and there's all this coming down the valley, all that kind of thing. And this was one of the things that I thought was super cool, because you've got this flood down in the valley, but then you've got God's chosen one up living safe in his refuge, and he's got a bunch of Canaanites with him who are allies. And so it's almost like this picture of resting in an ark. And that's God's chosen one, and the people with him, with Noah, it was his family. But here, he's actually being the blessing that he's supposed to the other nations.
Yeah.
The people that are with him, these Canaanites, they actually are safe from the war because they're up in this, they're up with God's, chosen one, with the protected one. And I just thought that was a really cool. I've never noticed that before. He already is being a blessing, just like Noah was a blessing to his family. And even it just almost feels like the New Testament, where it's if you join Abraham's family, then you are part of the saved, chosen family.
Right.
So the Canaanites are protected too. That's just cool.
Right. Well, that's very interesting. You're right. Very, very interesting. So, how big was Abraham's household that he has 318 trained men born in his house.
That means it's a
Well,
township.
it's like a town.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost, yeah. And the Hebrew word means trained. It doesn't mean trained militarily. It means they're trained, they're experienced. I would think that we would, probably as we're looking at this, think he has 318 able-bodied men in his household. I don't know that they, went through boot camp on the way, as he's training them. I don't think they're militarily trained, because then it says, and these he armed, which is also pretty astounding that he had enough armament to give them. And so he went in pursuit of them to where?
Dan.
As far as Dan, which is another anachronistic term. Dan doesn't exist yet. Okay, Dan is a son of Jacob, and we're still with Abram. We haven't even gone through Isaac yet. Probably, if it's the same Dan, it would probably be Laish, which is what the Danites changed the name to Dan when they took it over. And that doesn't occur until the time of Joshua, which kind of brings in, okay, so did Joshua finish the writing of the Pentateuch? Because obviously Moses couldn't write about his own death. Somebody else had to fill that up. But anyway, and this update of the name of the place could have been done later by a copyist or a scribe who's trying to help people understand exactly where it is. So then you think about this, that he goes in pursuit of the army of how many kings? 4 kings and their armies, with his 318, and then you also have the help of 3 other Amorites, as Ross said, whom he has befriended and has alliances with, Mamre, Eshcol, and Aner. And I'm going to know that they were there and fighting from when we get down to verse 24 of this chapter. Kind of reminds me of Midian, and fighting the Midianites with this innumerable horde. And Midian had 300 men and their lanterns and trumpets. It's like the marching band against the football team, and the marching band wins. So, yes.
Yeah, only Israel would remember this
Yeah.
this account. He's the founder of their nation.
Right.
Just go back, read his life.
Right.
318 people. I mean, the only thing Gideon could say is, "Yeah, well, I have 18 less." What does that matter?
Right.
Just remember this. Trust
Right.
God.
All right. Well, Joshua and Caleb did remember it, but nobody else did.
And these are his trained men, so you have to assume some of them had families. They
Yeah.
clearly had livestock. So, they're just traveling, town. And I just think that it's interesting that it kind of puts it more in perspective that Abraham was a sojourner, because the temptation when you have all
Right.
that, to just stop, build your own city,
Right.
and feel good and
Right.
confident in it, that is something that he had to not involve himself with,
Right.
so that he could follow God.
Right. Well, and we already know that, when Lot and he separated, God said, walk through the land. Everywhere you go is yours. And we talked about the fact, and you remember this, Mike, when we were up at Dan, and you could see the ancient gates of Dan, where Abram would have first come through when he came into the land. He's very familiar with this area. He's not unfamiliar with this part of the land. So, and again, Abram is the one who's directing this operation. So he does what nobody ever does, which is he divides his army. Listen, God's running the show here. And just like Gideon divided his army, Abram divides his army and attacked them at night, and it says routed them. And then he pursues them as far north as Damascus, which, by the way, is a correctly named city here. Damascus is one of the oldest continuously occupied cities in the world, with occupancy going back to 400 BC or earlier than that, the 4th millennium BC. So he defeats them soundly, and what does he recover? Everything, all of the booty that they took, and Lot, and all of his stuff, and his family as well. And again, as we talked about a minute ago, I think they thought that they were safe, and they certainly would have had no indication that someone was following them, let alone going to attack them. And as we're going to see, God was certainly with him. So question 10, what did Abraham do after he defeated the four? If your question sheets has 5 kings, that's an error. I made a mistake on that. It's corrected in the ones in the shelf right now. But there were 4 kings, not 5. So what did he do after he defeated them? Oh, I just answered that, didn't I? Defeated them soundly, etc. I know what I did. When I did this, I moved this down. So question 11, who came out, do you have about?
Yes.
Who came out, take the ab out, who came out to meet Abraham when he returned in verses 17 through 18? Okay, so he's going to meet these people in the valley of Shava, or the King's Valley, which seems to be a place that's still well known, probably it's on the other side of the western side of the Jordan, near Jerusalem, which is why we have one of those people there. And the reason we know that is because if you write down 2 Samuel 18:18, you'll see that Absalom raised a monument to himself at this very same place when he rebelled against his father David. So it'd probably be the same as if you have a New Testament map of the Kidron Valley. It would be pretty close to the same. Am I missing some of these comments? I feel like I'm... Okay, so Jeannie's just talking. Okay. So there's 2 personages that come out to meet him. One is a lot more significant than the other. The first one is who? Okay, so the king of Sodom, the defeated king of Sodom, comes out to meet him. Pardon me? Yes. I assume that's who it is. And in a noble gesture, what does he ask of Abram? Pardon me?
The king of Sodom?
Yes.
We don't have that either.
Yeah, we don't have
Get some stuff.
I don't know where you're getting that.
I probably got a little ahead of myself here. In verse 21, the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself."
I'm sorry, you skipped it.
Bless you. So he says, just give me the people and that you can keep all of the goods. We'll talk a little bit more about that because this offer is going to be refused. And why do you suppose it was refused? Or why does Abram here say that he's refusing it?
He doesn't want to be indebted to the king of Sodom.
Okay, and even more important than that, what's on the basis of what that he said that? He swore an oath to the Lord, God Most High, which is Yahweh El Elyon. And by the way, this shows that the use of Yahweh precedes Exodus chapter 6 at the burning bush. And what did Abram actually ask for? He just wanted Lot. He just wanted Lot and his family. He promised he wouldn't keep any of the spoils of this battle. In fact, what he's telling this king is, I didn't go up there to get rich. I went up there to rescue my relative and his family. And then what you said, Jonathan, is exactly right. He didn't want the king of Sodom to get any credit. And why did he want him to get any credit? Who does he want to get credit for this? God. So he's not going to let the king of Sodom get any credit for the blessing that God was giving him. And in fact, what's he asked for? What did Abram say that I'll take?
Just the food we need.
Okay, and what do we call that?
From the Lord.
Yeah, basically it is. He just wants his expenses covered. Whatever it cost me to go up there, get them, and bring them back, the food and all of that, that's what I want. I don't want anything else. And he says basically, you can have the rest. Except, what else does he add?
Payment for his allies.
Okay, so that his Amorite compatriots should receive their share of the booty because they were involved in this battle as well. And then who is the other person that shows up? Melchizedek, and that's where we are in question 12. So describe Melchizedek and tell what he did. So who is he?
King of Salem.
Okay, and before that even?
Priest of God Most High.
Priest of God Most High. The same terminology exactly that Abram used, that he swore an oath to. So this is Abram's God. This is the God Abram serves, the God that called him out of the Ur of the Chaldee. And Melchizedek is a high priest of that same God. And he's also the king of Salem. Melchizedek is mentioned in Psalm 110, verse 4. He's mentioned in Hebrews 5, 6, and 7. Psalm 2 itself is mentioned, Psalm 110 is mentioned. Peter mentions it in Acts, the 2nd chapter. Melchizedek is a very interesting person, okay? But this isn't a study of Melchizedek. We can do a study of Melchizedek, but we're just looking at him here. And
So why did he come out here? Why would, because it's just another town that he said, hey, glad you did that? I mean, what was it?
well, I think there's a purpose, and the purpose for Melchizedek showing up is seen in Psalm 110 and as he is a picture of Christ. And in fact, what does he do when he comes? What does he bring? What does Melchizedek bring?
Bread and wine.
Bread and wine. What's that for? Yeah. If somebody asked me, will somebody say the Lord's Supper and who would it be? I could guess. I think it's refreshment for all these armies, the people that have come back. I mean, they've traveled. You've got the captives coming back. You have the soldiers that are coming back with Abram here. And so he's bringing out food already prepared for them. And bread is representative of what?
Life.
Life. And wine is representative of what?
Right?
Life. Blood.
Celebration.
Oh.
Joy, not blood. You're thinking Lord's Supper. Stay in the time frame here. And so, listen, I know that it's hard not to make a connection of one who is a priest and a king who has neither beginning nor end, no parentage. There was no previous priest that he took the place of. He had no successor in any of that. And not think of the Lord's Supper, which is also bread and wine, or bread and the fruit of the vine. And so I'm not chastising that, because obviously that's part of the New Testament story. But if you look at it just here, then it's sustenance and it's celebration. Because what has Abram just done? He's had a great victory.
Throughout the oppressor.
Yes, it's time to enjoy that, Debbie.
The bread and wine says, in my little Bible says friendship and hospitality.
Okay, yeah. So then in verses 19 and 20, he blessed Abram. And the Hebrew writer makes a big deal about that, because who's blessed by who?
The lesser by the greater.
The lesser is blessed by the greater. And if we had Melchizedek and Abraham, we would probably put Abraham up here and Melchizedek down here, but that's not the way that it is, and it's not the way that Abram looked at it. In this case, Melchizedek is the greater. And the blessing must indicate that God was the power behind this victory. Because that's what Melchizedek says, blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, who praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. God is the one who gave you that victory with your 318 people there. And both of these, the Lord's Supper and this are types of fellowship, of a fellowship and a covenant meal. and he's praising God. So what did Abraham do for Melchizedek?
Gave him everything.
So even, I think before he gave it all all back to the king of Sodom, he took 10% of it out and gave it to the Melchizedek. And, maybe that's why the king of Sodom was feeling he needed to be bigger and offer him everything else. But this is another point the Hebrew writer makes about Melchizedek. And then finally, as we're closing up here, describe how this event ended. We've mentioned the offer of the king of Sodom, return the people, keep the goods. That was refused. And Abram accepted nothing and asked, I assume, and was granted that his friends get their share. Yes, Ross.
I think this section has always kind of confused me, but it really seems like it's a good example of the response to God's chosen one, right? Where you've got the king of Sodom who kind of wants to come out, he wants to like get stuff from Abram, and and the Sodom we know is evil, and it kind of feels like what's going on here. But then you've got Melchizedek who comes out to bless him,
Right.
and to
Right.
give to him and those kind of
Right.
things. So it's like there's two types of people in the world.
Right.
When you see God and how He's working in the world, do you go and you want to take from it and get all that you can out of it, or do you like praise
Right.
and give and join in that
Right.
joy?
And in both cases, the people that are giving are godly people, which Melchizedek, who is a priest, and Abram, who was a godly and faithful person. All right, so next week we will move on to the next lesson. I got through there. Thank you very much for your help.